back to regular schedule programming. What is going on, fish world? Welcome back to Aqua Malik. In this video, we'll be looking at the 5 stages of fish keeping, so from beginner or amateur to advanced aquarist. We'll define each stage and we'll look at where each person might be on the spectrum and what we can do to improve our fish keeping game so that we all become advanced level 5 fish keepers. This was a question posted by many of you guys to me, so I figured I should make an entire video about this because many of you guys always ask me, what defines an advanced fish keeper?
Produced by Malik.
So let's look at all the different stages of fish keeping and let's define them from stage 1 beginner or amateur to level 5 advanced aquarist. Now if you are a new fish keeper, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody starts somewhere. We just have to figure out where every person is and what we can do as fish keepers to advance to the next level and ultimately to level 5 advanced fish keeping level. If you are new here, please consider subscribing because it really does help me out quite a bit. And if you are a regular subscriber, thank you so much for your subscription. If you can help me out by sharing my channel with all your networks like Facebook and other social media sites, as well as fish keeping groups. So please help a brother out and share my channel and this video as well as many other videos through my channel with your social media networks so I can grow my channel fast. Thank you so much. So let's get into today's video and figure out what the 5 stages of fish keeping are. Level 1 is essentially a beginning fish keeper, somebody that's just picking up an aquarium. They've decided to pick up a tank, or they're picking up a tank in the near future, or they've just picked up a tank and they're setting up their aquarium nitrogen cycle. Now this is essentially the first step of keeping aquarium animals, fish included. So learning about your nitrogen cycle is quite important. There's a wealth of channels on YouTube, pretty much 95% plus channels have content regarding this particular issue and how to tackle this one first step, which is establishing your nitrogen cycle. So I highly recommend getting that information and figuring this step out if you are a brand new fish keeper before we move on to the other steps. And then once you figured out your nitrogen cycle and you've balanced your aquarium and you're no longer getting ammonia or nitrite spikes, and your tank is stable and you only have to do water changes to remove the nitrates, then you now come to level 2. Usually it takes most people a few months to a year or a few years, but some people advance really fast. It's all in the matter of research from advancing to level 2 from level 1. So it all depends on the individual person. So the faster you figure out your nitrogen cycle and the faster you can get to a balanced aquarium, where you're no longer having ammonia or nitrite spikes and you're no longer losing fish to those 2 particular reasons, then you are now at a level 2 hobby level. So level 2 fish keepers are usually pretty much majority of the fish keepers in the hobby are level 2 because they don't really seem to advance beyond that point. And it's fine. It's completely fine being a level 2 hobbyist, but this video is about how you can advance to level 4, 5 advanced levels. So let's look at what defines a level 3 hobbyist as opposed to a level 2 hobbyist. Now, if you are a new fish keeper, please figure out how to balance your tank before you start keeping a lot of the fish that you see on my channel, for example, because these animals are quite rare, endangered or critically endangered, and some of these animals are extinct in the wild, and they are all priority list fish. Even these hypencestrous king tigers are CARES priority list fish because their habitats are threatened by human activity and they could be going extinct and stuff, or already are going extinct in their natural habitat. So each individual animal is quite valuable, and before you start getting into these animals, you really have to get to an advanced level fish keeping level, because these animals, you do not want to have any mishaps or issues and lose your investment, or the animal, which is each individual animal's genetic material is important and valuable to conservation. So let's look at what level 3, 4 and 5 are, and let's see how we can advance to level 3, 4 and 5 from where we might be in the hobby. Now level 3 I believe is quarantine, and that's what defines an intermediate level fish keeper from an amateur beginner fish keeper. Now, how long you have been in the hobby does not seem to matter, because you get to the point of having to quarantine your fish after you've lost some expensive or valuable fish. So some people might not ever get to this point because they're quite lucky they have a mom and pop store. It is quite rare when a person has kept fish for like 20 or 30 years and they've never got a disease outbreak. But there are people that are that lucky, and that luck will eventually run out and they will get a disease outbreak. So you have to be careful, and I believe that's what step 3 is. So level 3 fish keepers are somebody or fish keepers that practice quarantine procedures when they buy new fish. So anytime a level 3 fish keeper brings a new animal into their fish room, they practice proper quarantine procedures for at least few weeks. Usually about 8 weeks is ideal. And then they figure out exactly what's going on with the fish, if there's an issue or something. And then once the animal is visibly and physically fine and there's no issues, in the animal exhibiting any signs of disease or anything, then they decide to introduce those animals into their general population. And this basically stops untimely deaths in your fish room. And this is the point where most advanced fish keepers start taking you seriously. So like anytime you're talking to one of the big name people in the hobby, that's like people look up to, people that give talks on fish tank groups or forums, or for example, or clubs, or for example, or cataclysm, those type of people will only take you seriously once you start quarantining animals. So this is the general rule, so that's why I put it at level 3. So an intermediate level fish keeper is somebody that understands their nitrogen cycle and does not lose fish due to nitrogen, ammonia or nitrite spikes, and also does not lose their fish untimely to disease outbreaks because they practice proper quarantine procedures. It's quite important. I will put quarantine, how to quarantine and stuff like that videos up here so you guys can check some of those out. As well, I will also put a link at the end where I lost a bunch of zebra plecos last year due to a disease outbreak, and because I practiced proper quarantine, I didn't actually lose any of my adult fish or anything like that, because the sick fish never got any contact with my existing stock. So the sick fish came in with the disease. I didn't know they had the disease. They exhibited signs once they got to my fish room a day or two later. They died within a couple of days. Out of 15 fish, I lost 8, so $1,600 down the drain. But I didn't actually have to flush several thousand, maybe $10,000 worth of livestock in my other tanks, which could have gotten sick if I were to just plop and drop these fish directly into my existing setups. So that is essentially why quarantine is important. And so yes, step 3, quarantine. Level 4, I believe, is essentially where you actually become an advanced fish keeper. And level 4 is basically when people start doing their research. There's no more impulse buying. You find out about the animal before you get them. You have target animals that you want to get. And these animals you plan to get years and years ahead of time. And you plan it and you set up the aquarium. It's already properly established. You already have it, all the filters are cycled. There's already other animals living in it. And the tank is perfect. And then you go out and you spend your money after you've done all your research and you've set up the aquarium and everything, and you pick up the fish. You never see a fish and say, oh, that's a nice fish, let me take it home, and come on a forum like Facebook group or whatnot and ask people exactly what your fish might be, what can I feed it, I just picked it up. None of these questions arise when you're a level 4 fish keeper. So that's basically an advanced fish keeper who actually understands the nitrogen cycle, who can maintain a balanced aquarium long term without any spikes, who practices quarantine and also does all their research pretty much before they pick up the fish. Now, it looks pretty straightforward to become an advanced fish keeper. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of work, is it? It's actually pretty easy. Anybody could be an advanced fish keeper. It's just that people don't spend the time or necessary effort to take their hobby to the next level, and in turn, they stay at an amateur level indefinitely, and this is basically where a lot of people seem to end up, which is fine. But this video is to help you guys to get to level 4 and 5 fish keeping and to become an advanced fish keeper. So now, essentially, once you're at level 4, what is next? Like, seems like you're pretty much maxed out, right? So essentially what level 5 fish keeping is when you're keeping species only tanks. So you might be keeping your one type of hypancestrus fish, for example, in a tank by themselves. You might keep some dither fish like these tetras. You might keep some other fish in there to help, like Corydoras, for example, to help with your cleaning. But you're not keeping animals that can hybridize with your hypancestrus, and you're not keeping two types of hypancestrus together. You're not keeping different types of Corydoras in the same tank. You keep animals of the same species together with their own kind in established setups for that species. So these animals thrive in those setups. They often breed for you, and they are essentially doing what they're naturally supposed to do, living their best lives, so to speak. Now, essentially, level 5 fish keeping is a conservation-minded individual, and these are people that are basically in fish clubs that are usually giving talks and stuff. So people that everybody likes to look up to is a level 5 fish keeper, and it literally is the only difference from a level 4 to a level 5 fish keeper is keeping individual species in their own tanks. And once you get to this level of fish keeping, there's essentially, you are an expert in the hobby. You might have to still do research, and there might be things you still have to learn. I mean, I'm always learning new things because the fish that I have, a lot of times there's not even information on them. A majority of the time there's not a lot of information available for some of the species that we have in the hobby now, so there's always things to learn, and nobody knows everything, so there's always things to learn. But they have done their research, they know what they're doing, and they're keeping these animals in their own particular tanks with their own specific setups, perfect temperature, perfect water conditions, perfect pH. You're not making any compromises for the inhabitants of the aquarium, because the only focus is those animals that you're keeping and essentially preserving for conservation purposes, and that is what a level 5 fish keeper is. So essentially, any person can start right now. If you're a brand new fish keeper and you want to get to level 5, it's quite easy by following these 5 simple steps. You might have to spend a little bit of time at level 1 and 2 because that's a lot of learning. But after level 1 and 2, it's really basically taking 3 necessary steps to becoming an advanced fish keeper. So once you've learned how to keep an aquarium and how to keep a balanced aquarium without having any spikes or crashes or anything like that, essentially ammonia and nitrite spikes, you do not have those anymore, you now are able to become a level 5 advanced fish keeper by taking the 3 necessary next steps, which is quarantining your incoming fish. So essentially quarantining every single fish that comes into the facility before you introduce them to your tanks. And the next step is doing all your research before you pick up your animals, so no impulse buying. And the 5th step is, I believe, conservation, being conservation minded and keeping species only aquariums. I'm not saying just keep one animal in one aquarium, but keeping animals that are dedicated to that tank and keeping accompanying animals that might enhance their life by being there, but not take away from the animal that you're focusing on. So essentially, species only tanks are something like this, okay? These 397s are in here temporarily. I am moving them to their own tank, but usually this tank is my hypancestrus species 333 tank. Well, they're essentially a specific locale 333, and even their fry do not get mixed with any of the other hypancestrus fry, just because I don't want to take a chance of them intermingling with any of the other fish that I have and having a chance of them hybridizing and diluting my pure gene pool. So level 5. I hope this helps some of you guys to achieve advanced level, to become advanced level fish keepers really fast. And I hope that the video is helpful to new fish keepers so they can easily advance to the next levels and eventually become level 5 fish keepers. The more level 5 fish keepers we have in the hobby, the better it is for the hobby, because then we as a collective can do more conservation of these rare and endangered animals. A lot of the fish that we have in our aquariums are endangered or at the threat of going extinct due to human activity. I talk about this quite a bit in some of my videos, so if you haven't checked those out, highly recommend checking out some of the playlists and some of the recent videos that I've released and stuff. I'll put some links at the end and stuff so you guys can see it. And the more of you guys get to level 5 advanced level, the better it is for the hobby. So thank you so much for taking interest in becoming an advanced fish keeper, and thank you so much for watching this video till the end, and I'll see you on the next video. I love you all. God bless you.
Produced by Malik.